Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to What Makes a Good Box Set. So we just wrapped up 2023 and the holiday season always sees a lot of box sets getting released, but once upon a time they were predominantly only released in the holidays. Now though, they are big business year-round, especially with the rise and surge in popularity of archival material. Filling these box sets with that is a big thing, and a lot of artists have found that they can mine their vaults and get really cool stuff out to the fans. And so that's what we're getting here. And that leads me to the question of what makes a good box set? I've got 30 examples I'm going to run through. I'll break all that down in just a bit. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also, leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you're going to stay up to date on really cool episodes just like this one with what makes a good box set. And so I've broken it down into 5 categories. Number 1, packaging. Number 2, the variety of material. Something new for the hardcore fan being the 3rd thing. 4th one being the sequence of the music on those discs in the box set, and 5 being the non-musical content. And as I mentioned, we're going to run through 30 examples that will break all that down here. But before we do that, I did want to point out a couple old school examples of box sets. This one was a pretty common style, the long box, the lift top box. This is Journey's Time Cubed or Time 3. Just lifted off like that. Always had the big, thin, long book as part of it, and then you would get your discs in individual jewel cases like that. So they were just like regular albums that you could take out, hang on to. And that's something that's kind of gone by the wayside. I'm going to get into that a little bit. And Cheap Trick's Sex America Cheap Trick, the book style. And so this one here being, you'd open it up, you have discs not in jewel cases, individual holders, and then you get the book that is generally bound right into the middle of it like that, so you can't take it out, more discs in the backside. But those are the 2 fairly common ones early on. And we don't actually see a lot of this one at all. I don't know the last time I saw one that was like that. This one we still see quite a bit of in varying degrees. And so that I wanted to set the tone with. But we're going to kick off here with the first thing, and that being packaging. So for me, it comes down to the ease of operation. So whether it's a slipcase style that the content pulls out of, or a clamshell style, which this is a good example of it. Phil Lynott's Grand Slam Slam Anthems. Clamshells become very popular, in fact, where it just opens like that. You get a little mini book on it, and then all of the discs inside are in individual cardboard sleeves. Keeps the cost down, which is nice, and kind of provides a little bit of all of the bonus that I think makes a good box set in it. The lift top that I just showed you there with the Journey box, but there's many other variations of it when talking about the slipcase style. This AC/DC Backtracks version shows what I'm talking about with that. Pretty easy to get into your content like so. And there's also the more unique version of the style of it, where it can be very complicated to operate the content that's inside of it. I'm going to show you some examples of that one in a bit. I'm going to run through some content to talk about, and then we'll get into a whole bunch of examples. The size of them, whether they're uniform or they're odd. So how do they fit, on your wall when you're trying to store them like me? Do they fit evenly next to one another? Do they not? How sturdy are they? You spend a lot of money on some of these box sets, and then if they're kind of fragile, one of the ones that I want to show as an example of that, the Megadeth War Chest has this raised cover. It's just in a very thin plastic, so you can't put anything on top of it. So I can't rest another one. This AC/DC one's pretty light, but I don't want to put anything very heavy on it. And if I put it up right, I should do it like this for you guys so you see the spine, then it throws everything off that way. This one has the discs individual in it, and then there's a book holder in the middle and more discs. So a lot of cool aspects about this, but it's kind of odd the way that it's put together. Um, Still, though, making it very unique, and that is another really, really cool thing about box sets. But, you know, the Eddie's Archives from Iron Maiden has that again raised surface. This one being made out of a metal material. And then if I can get into it quick enough, there we go. The content is very cool how it's laid out in that style. But it's unique, but again, it's a little cumbersome and not like any other box set. So it makes it harder to store. And in the end of the day, of course, it comes down to accessing the discs and whether or not they're in cardboard sleeves that I can take out, or they're stuck in, like with the case of the Megadeth, I can't actually take this out and put this back on the shelf. Whereas certain ones of these, and I'll show this Neil Young Archives box set, another one being an example of a unique condition where it's magnetic at the center. So it stays together and you just pull it apart like that. And when you lift up these things here, you get the discs individual, and I can pull this out, get one of these out here, and it's just in regular sleeves like you would expect. So I can actually take that out and have that on my shelf, listen to it next to things, and pop this. But then again, the size of this is a little different. It is pretty similar to those long box versions like the Journey. So not so bad all in all. Some other examples to go through now that fill in on what I was just talking about with all that. And I'll continue with another Neil Young box set. This one here being Archives 2. And you could see the size of this guy here, but this one is enormous. And you open the top up, and while they're still all individual, there's a lot of wasted space because those discs aren't that big. But look at the size of this thing. And the book does go down. It's a decent sized book, but it doesn't go all the way down into this. So a lot of wasted space, very big box that just doesn't need to be that big. One of the very unique ones is this one, AC/DC Backtracks. This was the limited edition amp version that was on the band's website. I don't think they ever sold this in stores. You can literally plug into this thing and work it like an amp. The top comes off of this, and then all the content is inside there. But this is one that I would talk about being fragile and cumbersome, because while it looks very cool, it doesn't isn't really easily accessible. So for me getting in here to get to the content of this one doesn't happen very often, which is why I picked up for very cheap at a used record store one time, this smaller edition of it. Jane's Addiction Cabinet Full of Curiosities is a very cool, unique one. It has this hardware on it to operate like a cabinet. So I have to flip that and then pull that open there, and then it actually looks like a little cabinet on the inside with glass doors and everything. Very cool, but again, I can't put this next to anything or rest anything on top of it because of that hardware. So I get some odd conditions on ones like those. Metallica Death Magnetic, shaped like a coffin, makes sense, absolutely no information on it, bums me out to no end, and again, just doesn't fit with anything, but the content inside was cool on that. One that, another very cumbersome style one, yet being really unique and cool, Alice Cooper, old school, that looks like the desk that we used to, grow up and have in schools that lifted like this, if you're old enough to remember that, and then all the content inside it. But it's not flat. It actually slopes like a desk does. So again, stacking things or putting it upright, those create some issues to be addressed. Smashing Pumpkins Siamese Dream. This is the lift top style, but it doesn't want to open. And it became a thing where I had to really, really work at it to get it to actually open, or use a paper clip I found to do that. They fixed it later on. This is Pisces Carrot, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, where now it just lifts off. It's, so obviously something like this one, is much more readily accessible. I get into this one a lot more. It's also got some cool content in here with a cassette in here, some postcards, the CDs are individual cases behind all of that. There's the book that you can see right there from behind. So I like these smaller ones like this, although I like it better when they have the names of the tracks and everything on the back side of it. Alice Cooper, this one being Life and Crimes, being a very unique one that has Alice Cooper, looks like he's locked up there behind it. And this one being an old school one as well that has that book in it, plus individual jewel case discs. So this one here, and of course the names on the back. So this one's actually very close to that. And this one I think came out back around 98, 99, somewhere in that time frame. I'm not seeing the date quick enough on the back side of it, but it was around that time frame. So this is kind of an old school one as well. Grand Funk, Trunk of Funk, strong enough and everything that I can rest stuff on it. It does look like a trunk, making it very unique, and it actually has the hardware like one, so it operates. And then the discs themselves are individual in here, so that's very cool as part of that version. Something very simple, Judas Priest remasters, where it's very simple box set, just all the albums themselves and a nice holder like this. There is a booklet up at the front end, and of course it makes the logo, which is also nice too, to have a holder that puts them all together like that. And this was a recent one I just picked up. Yes, Union 30 Live that looks like a road case. And since this has to do with the live touring and everything, very cool. This is one of the, display boxes that will just stay out for those reasons. It's got a lot of memorabilia sitting right on top, but then all the discs are in individual jewel cases in there. So I bought this more for the packaging than I actually did the content. And the last one of this first round of stuff is this one, the Kiss. They just called this the box set from 2001 that looks like a guitar case. And when we open this guy up here, we get the albums in, red velvet lined looking guitar case, which is very cool. Came with a message from the band and has a nice hardcover book that sits there. So that kind of wraps up the beginning part where I was talking about the packaging of these. As we move into the second topic to hit on here, the variety of materials. So for me, it can't just be album release material. Now, like I showed you with the Phil Lynott, the clamshell style, or even the Judas Priest box set where it is a collection of albums, I get that, and it is nice to get box sets that are that way. But in terms of what really makes one great for me is beyond just being album content to have that variety of material. So alternate takes, demos, B-sides, outtakes from the sessions, live material, and the latest thing to become very popular is the remix of an album. Whether live or studio, people are going back in and remixing and giving these albums a lot more punch. David Coverdale is even going in and enhancing, embellishing, adding, meaning going in and doing new recordings of stuff and adding it to the material. And the third topic to hit on is something new for the hardcore fan. So regardless of the content that the box set is, if it's an album version like the Judas Priest one, each of these in here came with 2 bonus tracks, and in most cases it was 1 unreleased studio song and 1 unreleased live song. So whereas I owned, I think, every one of these albums originally, getting them remastered was cool, getting the box set and the packaging, but I was getting a new unreleased song and I was getting a live track. So even as the hardcore fan that already owned all of the albums, they still gave me something above and beyond just the regular stuff that I already owned. And so for me, that makes a big difference, having some sort of unreleased material that I didn't already have in my collection. And at least for me, I prefer it to be something other than just an unreleased live show. Unless no other live show exists from that band, I want it to be unreleased studio material, and that's just my personal preference though. So some examples of that stuff, I talked about White Snake, and I mentioned them doing the remix, and that's the case with this one. Still Good to Be Bad. This was their 10th studio album, getting I think a 15th anniversary reissue when they did this, but it got a 2023 remix. But then they had alternate editions and remixes from back in the day, different versions, outtakes. Then they had the Evolutions, which was demos. There's also included in here Blu-ray with music videos, interviews, all kinds of great stuff in here. So I get the album, but then I get a remix. But then even beyond that, I'm getting demos, outtakes, live, and so forth. One that really does it up right is Tom Petty, Wildflowers, and All the Rest. Not only a unique content box set, this one here has a magnetic release on it. You open it up, and this one being a numbered edition, you get a tour book on here, you get content, memorabilia type stuff inside that folder, and then you get this book that's in here that has all of the discs and everything in it. We open this up and you get an amazing book that's in here, but then the discs are in individual sleeves, but they don't come out. So they're part of the box set itself. That's something I generally prefer not to have it like that. I like to have my discs come out and be completely separate whenever possible. I'm just popping everything back in the box set because if you're anything like me, you got to keep all this stuff pristine. There was also this version of it, the 4-disc. That was a 5-disc version, and it's got a smaller book and less of that content. The discs are still held inside it, so I can't take them out. But for a little compact box set, this is a nice edition of it. Bruce Springsteen does it right. Here's another one that is a slipcase style. So this comes off of that. We get a really nice book as part of this one here. I mean, coffee table style book. It's so nice. And then you get this little folder style thing. If I can get this the right way, which has a cool little thing with lyrics and a replica of how he writes everything out in the composition. But then this thing actually has the albums in individual cardboard sleeves. So even though they're in a holder like this, I can take them out one by one, have them next to the stereo, leave them out for a week at a time or whatever, and then I can pop them back in. And so I have always felt like Bruce Springsteen, did this up right. And he compiled tons of outtakes and things from the recording sessions of The River. This box set's called The Ties That Bind, the River collection, but it was all about the album The River. And so tons of unreleased material. He also resequenced the album into a single disc because it was originally a double. So you get a new take on what the album would have been had it only been a single album. And then you get all the outtakes in here, plus you get DVDs and other things and just a lot of great stuff to look at. Kiss and Destroyer, their box set, this was a really expensive one. It's full of bonus material content, memorabilia type stuff, which Kiss loves to do. This one might have been a little more pricey. I think this was around $250 to $300, but the content on here, for me at least, it made it worthwhile. Disc 2 had the Destroyer era demos on it, and there were 5 from Paul Stanley and let's see, I think 11 from Gene Simmons on here. Maybe it's 10, but most of these being unreleased songs that were never recorded for albums. Some would turn up on Gene Simmons' solo album, but most of these being completely unreleased. And for me to get some unreleased Kiss material, as a huge Kiss fan, it was, over the moon time for me on this one. Now, there's also other discs that are in here. There's the outtakes, alternate versions, and different mixes on here. And that's kind of cool. there's a lot of stuff that repeats. They'll give you an instrumental version, a demo version, a live version, and I don't really need all of that. So that's kind of where the content can become overkill on some of these. And that's actually one of the reasons I don't own any of the box sets from Metallica, because so far they just overkill at repeating the same songs. Demo take one, take two, take three, a rehearsal, a live version, a second live version, a fourth live version. I don't need 10 discs that just keep repeating the content. So that's where I draw the line. To me, that is overkill in the unreleased content. But for those diehards, if that works for you, that's great. It just doesn't for me. But this was a really cool one that had the right content. It's also got amazing memorabilia and that sort of stuff. Now, the next thing, number 4 to talk about, is music sequencing. So, if they put it chronologically, that's order of release by year. I don't always like that. Some people like that, and it can be good, but I tend to like it better when the discs themselves are actually sequenced, non-chronological, done to create a unique flow. So it's not always about which was recorded first or what album came out when, that sort of thing. But it's actually saying, this is going to create nice peaks and valleys in the listening experience. Tom Petty did that with his live 5 CD box set, where instead of grouping whole shows together or all of starting in late 70s, up through the 80s kind of a thing, he just, merged different live recordings together to create the best. Each disc was like its own live listening experience. That was a very cool thing. I also like it when they do themed type groupings of the material or sequencing of the material. So a disc of rockers, a disc of ballads, a disc of all one singer if there's multiple singers in a band. Or how things are grouped to put all the B-sides together, all the live content together, because sometimes you get the disc like Kiss did for Destroyer, and it has outtakes, so studio-related stuff, single edits, live versions, and it just jumps around. And I would really rather be listening to live or listening to studio and not having it mixed up. So some examples of these things here. The Genesis BBC broadcast that just came out, this is a 2023 box set. This is chronological for the most part. You start with disc 1 and you start in 70 and you go to 72, but then it jumps back to 71, then it goes to 72. So it's kind of jumping around a bit. You do it for the most part, as I said, stay chronologically as you work your way up. Disc 4, though, goes from 87 to 98 back to 92. The thing that I most don't like about this, though, is not just that, it's that they split live shows across 2 discs. So like CD1 starts with Nebworth 78 and then goes into the Lyceum 1980 show. But then that show is split onto disc 3. At the end of disc 3, they add the Wembley 87 show, but then that's split onto disc 4. Disc 4 could have been all the Wembley show itself. Maybe the Lyceum show should have been on 2 discs, but to split them up the way that they're doing and have other material around before or after, I didn't like as much. So that was one thing I didn't so much care about in terms of the way that this one was done. We were talking about it with the other Kiss box, but Creatures of the Night box, again, I picked this up because of some unreleased material on here, but they have things on here like the song Rock and Roll All Night, take 2, take 1, take 2 with a different date on it. So 3 in a row of the exact same song, just different takes, and they do that a number of times on this 3rd disc, which is referred to as the demos, rarities, and outtakes. So you get I Still Love You, 2 different ones, Saints and Sinners, 3 times. These are in a row. And again, I don't mind multiple versions, but let's split them up on different albums so I can listen to an album as a standalone listening experience without going, I've already heard this song twice, I don't want to hear it a 3rd time. So unless they are wildly different, like if I heard God of Thunder with Paul Stanley singing and then God of Thunder with Gene Simmons singing, and that's a slowed down version and the Paul Stanley one is a more rock and sped up version of it, then okay, maybe, because those are really distinct different versions of it, even though the lyrics are still the same. But when the song is the same and it's just different takes of it and very subtle differences, I don't care for when bands do that sort of stuff. Now, this is one, the Kiss Icons, where they actually break down the content by singer. So you get a Gene Simmons disc, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. They do the solo content as well as the Kiss band content grouped in on that. So that was a very cool one there. Now, in terms of chronology, one that I did like, the Deep Purple Shades box set from 68 to 98. It's hard to believe that we already need another box set. It has been so long since then, about 25 plus years, that we now need another Deep Purple box set to give us everything. But this one here, which starts back in 68 with Hush, their first single, it added in so many rarities that in keeping it chronological was fine, because you would listen to a few album cuts, then you'd get some rare stuff. Then you'd listen to some more album or single cuts, then you'd get some rare stuff in here. So I was okay with this also because of the multiple different lineups and different singers. This one made more sense to keep chronologically so that you could get all of one lineup, one, what they call Mark 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth, version of the band together. And like the Cheap Trick one, this is in that style, but they did it a little different in this one, where they opened it this way, and then this opened up to hold the discs in it. And the book in this one was a standalone that I could pull out and read. So out of all of those book style ones, like the Cheap Trick one, this one here I found to be my favorite version of that style, and a little unique, making it a special one for me. Here's one that, like I mentioned early on, the slipcase style, where the discs are just in this one. So instead of the clamshell, you've got the ones that pull out like this. And this one here, we're grouping bonus content onto a disc. And unfortunately, it's not any content that a CD fan doesn't already have. So if you've owned these albums, all of the stuff, the 8 tracks that are on the studio rarities portion has all been released previously from Van Halen before this. So it's not really rare. And what I didn't like is they actually pulled some of the content off of the album, like Balance. 2 of the songs couldn't fit on a vinyl version. So they became rarities to the vinyl community, but not to the CD community. Yet they removed them on the CD edition to put them on the rarities, making the Balance album not complete the way that I am used to hearing it. And so doing that kind of bummed me out that they would do that to the reissue of this version of it. But a lot of people liked it. I feel that the remastering of that was more like a remix, because it is so different sounding from the original albums. It's not just an enhancement of sound the way a typical remaster would be, using the same settings and everything, just newer technology. It really changed the levels of where something sat within the mix. And that was a change. So not my cup of tea for that. Now, moving on to the last point to hit on non-musical content, having things like book, memorabilia, DVDs, and Blu-rays that might have documentary, interviews, making of, that kind of stuff. All very cool. We've seen a lot of examples and stuff like that already, but I've got 3 more here to touch on as we wrap things up. One of my favorites is the way that Jethro Tull does its box sets, Broadsword and the Beast. This is the book style, a little bit smaller version of that Cheap Trick one. The discs are individually held. There's also ones that are held in sleeves like this. I put my, I think I put the live albums in that portion of it. The book is in the middle of it. Very well done, very densely populated, full of info. Another one of those cardboard sleeve holders, and then more discs in the back side of it. So on this one here, just getting the DVDs, you get, remixed 5.1 surround sound, you get live content, video content, the book that's in this, the way that it's put together. They always do it upright. An example of what not to do, one of the ones that I didn't like, was the recent Stevie Nicks box set, the complete studio albums and rarities. Huge big box set. Could have come in something about this size, and I'll show you, because when we open this up here, this little piece of cardboard on the front is not a book. It is a single piece of cardboard that doesn't say anything on the inside and has nothing on the back side of it. And all the discs themselves sit in the middle of this, creating all this additional space behind it that didn't need to be there. And on top of that, when we get into looking at these, you barely can read anything that's there. So not having a book with this really bummed me out. It's just music. It was very expensive, and I don't think that it was put together particularly well. The content, the rarity aspect of this, I absolutely love. Getting 2 separate discs full of rare or unreleased material was absolutely a dream for me. So of course I had to buy it, but then I was let down once I opened it. And one of my absolute favorite box sets that really kind of hits the mark on everything is the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon box set. This one here, it's very cool. It's easy to access. It is a lift top style box like that. It's got great unreleased content in it. Cool memorabilia and things, a scarf, marbles, coasters, the CDs, not all of them, but some of them, my favorite ones, do come in the individual sleeves like this. So you get that, book and other stuff that is in here. So you get the album, of course, you get unreleased content for the die-hard fan, you get memorabilia, you get book, you get information, you get all the things that I think really hit up and make a great box set. And so, there you go. 30 examples of what makes a good box set. Hopefully you've enjoyed this 30-minute video on all of this. If nothing else, just getting to see some of the cool box sets that I've got in my collection. But from this, you can kind of take away what you can be looking for in a box set to know whether it's what you want to sink your hard-earned cash into, or if you want to get something else. In some cases where multiple versions of the box sets themselves get released, you may say, I only want this version, or no, I want to shell out for this one. But that is the idea of this video here, to give you guys a little more information. Regardless of what do you guys think makes a good box set, and what maybe is your favorite box set? Let me know. We'll have a cool discussion about it. All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.